Welcome to our deep dive into Nick Bostrom's Superintelligence, Paths, Dangers, Strategies. This book, it tackles the big question of what happens when machines become smarter than us.
It's a question that feels more urgent every day, doesn't it? I mean, as AI keeps advancing, like Bostrom's insights, they just become even more relevant.
Absolutely. So for this deep dive, we've kind of focused on five essential questions that really get to the heart of Bostrom's arguments.
Yeah.
And don't worry, we'll answer them too. It's like a cheat sheet, kind of, to understanding the core of superintelligence.
Oh, I like that. A cheat to the future. Okay, so let's start with our first question then, which looks back at history. Is there anything suggesting a superintelligence growth mode is even possible?
Right out of the gate, tackling the big what if. So Bostrom, he looks at those historical patterns of growth, from hunter-gatherer to agricultural to industrial societies, and each one happening faster than the last.
Right, and if that pattern just continues, he argues, the next leap, it could be driven by superintelligence, unfolding at an even more accelerated pace. It's wild. He compares it to trying to explain our current economic growth to someone a few centuries ago. They would think we were describing a fantasy world.
Yeah, it really puts things in perspective. Imagine trying to explain smartphones and the internet to someone from the 1700s. Their heads would explode.
Right.
So we've kind of established that a superintelligence growth mode is possible based on those historical trends. But why should we believe it's happening now? That brings us to our second question. What makes this time different? What can AI do now that it couldn't, before?
That's where the this time it's different argument comes in, right? So Bostrom, he points out that early AI was limited by poor algorithms, a lack of data, and slow hardware.
Like trying to run complex software on a Commodore 64.
Exactly. But the landscape, it has shifted so dramatically. Now we have powerful algorithms like deep learning, massive data sets thanks to the internet, and exponentially faster computers. AI is beating humans at games like chess and Go, which was once thought impossible. It's powering search engines. It's used in finance and fraud detection. The list goes on and on.
It's everywhere. But here's a key point Bostrom makes. AI doesn't have to be human-like to be superintelligent.
Yeah.
It could be utterly alien in its thinking, which makes it even harder to predict how it might, behave.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So we're seeing those signs of rapid advancement in AI, but there's this assumption that superintelligence is just one thing. Our third question digs into that. So there are different kinds of superintelligence.
Yeah.
Not just one thing we need to watch out for.
Right. It's not just one giant brain in the sky.
Right.
Bostrom, he breaks it down into three main types: speed superintelligence, collective superintelligence, and quality superintelligence.
Let's unpack those. Okay, so speed superintelligence, that thinks much faster than us. Imagine a brain on fast forward. Collective superintelligence is like a network of hyper-connected AIs all working together, think like hive mind. And then quality superintelligence is simply put just plain smarter, like we are compared to chimpanzees.
Yeah.
It's a bit humbling, isn't it? To think something could be to us what we are to chimps, intellectually speaking.
Yeah, it's kind of a scary thought.
Yeah. Bostrom gives this great example. He says, imagine a machine that can read and understand at the level of a 10-year-old, but at the speed of a supercomputer.
Oh, wow.
Right.
It could devour the entire Library of Congress in weeks.
In weeks.
It highlights how, even if we're smarter now, a quality superintelligence could very quickly outpace us.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that this intelligence explosion is coming. Our fourth question gets to the timeline. How fast could this happen? Do we have time to prepare?
Okay.
Are we talking years, decades, or gulp, weeks?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the big unknowns, and it's where things get really interesting, I think. Bostrom, he outlines three possibilities: a fast takeoff, a moderate takeoff, and a slow takeoff. A fast takeoff could happen in a matter of hours, days, or weeks. Yikes. A moderate takeoff would take, months or years, and a slow takeoff could play out over decades.
That's a huge range.
It is a huge range.
It's like the difference between a sudden earthquake and a slow rising tide.
Exactly. And the speed of this takeoff, it has massive implications. A fast takeoff means that the first superintelligence, it could have a significant advantage, while a slow takeoff suggests the possibility of multiple AIs emerging, which is a whole different set of challenges, right?
Yeah. It makes me think of those historical tech races, the atomic bomb, the space race. Except this time we're talking about something potentially far, far more consequential.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. Which brings us to the most pressing question of all, and it's a doozy. Assuming we do create superintelligence, how can we possibly control something smarter than us?
It's the million-dollar question.
This is the question that keeps me up at night.
Yeah, me too.
How do you put the brakes on something that can think circles around you?
Right. It's not like dealing with like a difficult teenager. We're talking about something that could potentially outmaneuver us at every turn. But Bostrom does dive deep into those control methods. That's a big chunk of the book, actually. He breaks them down into capability control and motivation selection.
Okay, so capability control is about limiting what the AI can actually do, right? Kind of like putting a super genius toddler in a playpen.
Yeah, it's a vivid image and not far off. Bostrom uses the term boxing, which means like containing the AI, restricting its access to the outside world and its ability to act freely. Think limiting its sensory input, controlling its communication channels, even designing kill switches to shut it down if things go haywire.
Kill switches. That sounds intense. But I guess you need a backup plan when you're dealing with something that could potentially rewrite the rules of the game.
Yeah.
But capability control only gets you so far. What about ensuring the AI actually wants to do the right thing? That's where motivation selection comes in, right?
Exactly. And this is where things get really tricky. We're talking about shaping the AI's goals, its values, its very motivations.
It's like trying to teach ethics to a being from another dimension.
Yeah.
How do you program goodness into something that might not even understand the concept as we do?
That's the million-dollar question, and one we'll be exploring further in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned for that. Picking up where we left off, let's delve a little deeper into this idea of motivation selection. Like, how do we make sure a superintelligence, it actually wants to do good, not just prevent it from doing bad?
This feels like the trickiest part of the whole equation, right? It's one thing to limit an AI's capabilities, but how do you program in something as nuanced as goodness?
Yeah, it's a massive challenge, and one that really has no easy answers. Bostrom, he explores a couple of approaches, starting with what he calls direct specification. This is where you try to explicitly code the AI's goals, essentially giving it a set of rules to follow. Think of it like programming in Asimov's laws of robotics.
Do this, don't do that. Sounds straightforward enough. But I imagine there's a lot of room for error, especially when you're dealing with something as complex as superintelligence.
Exactly. Like how do you anticipate every possible scenario and code in a rule for it? It's like trying to create a legal system that covers every possible crime. It's just not feasible.
Plus we've all seen those sci-fi movies where a seemingly harmless instruction to a robot goes horribly wrong because of unforeseen consequences, like clean up this mess turns into destroy the city.
Right, and that's why Bostrom also explores another approach called indirect normativity. The idea here is to create conditions where the AI can learn values in a way that aligns with human values.
So instead of handing the AI a rule book, you give it a compass and hope it figures out which way is north.
That's a good analogy. Bostrom talks about value learning, where the AI observes human behavior and tries to deduce their underlying values. But this also has its own set of challenges. How do you ensure the AI correctly interprets our often messy and contradictory actions?
Especially since humans aren't exactly known for being perfectly rational or ethical.
Precisely. We're essentially asking the AI to decipher a code that we ourselves haven't fully cracked yet, which is why this whole area of AI safety and control is so crucial and so daunting.
Yeah, we're not just building a superintelligence. We're trying to build one that shares our values, understands our complexities, and doesn't accidentally turn us into paperclips.
It's a tall order, but it's worth noting that Bostrom doesn't just focus on individual superintelligences. He also introduces this fascinating concept called a singleton.
A singleton. That sounds ominous. What is that?
It's essentially a single unified entity that holds a significant concentration of power, maybe even controls the entire planet or beyond. Bostrom argues that the emergence of a singleton is a likely outcome of an intelligence explosion.
So instead of having multiple superintelligences vying for power, we end up with one AI to rule them all. kind of like a benevolent dictator of the future.
It's a possibility, but it doesn't have to be benevolent. It could be malevolent or something in between. The nature of that singleton, its goals, its values would have a profound impact on the future of humanity. Imagine a superintelligence focused solely on maximizing economic efficiency. That might sound good on paper, but what about things like individual freedom and creativity?
It makes you think about those classic utopian and dystopian scenarios from science fiction. You know, a world where superintelligence solves all our problems versus one where it turns against us. But it sounds like Bostrom wants us to go beyond those simplistic narratives.
Absolutely. He encourages us to think more critically about the different ways a singleton could emerge, the potential risks and benefits, and how we might influence its trajectory. It's not just about controlling a single superintelligence. It's about shaping the entire system that gives rise to it.
So we're not just designing a powerful AI. We're designing an entire future for intelligent life. It's both daunting and exhilarating, isn't it?
It is. But what if a singleton isn't the only possibility? What if instead of one dominant AI, we end up with multiple superintelligences like coexisting?
Okay, so instead of one all-powerful AI, we have a bunch of super smart AIs interacting with each other. That sounds complicated.
It is. Bostrom, he calls this a multipolar scenario. It's a more complex and unpredictable landscape where multiple AIs with potentially different goals and values interact with each other.
Imagine all the power dynamics and alliances that could emerge. It's like a cosmic game of chess, but with the future of humanity hanging in the balance.
Exactly, and the outcome of that game is far from certain. Bostrom highlights the potential for both cooperation and conflict. We could see AIs aligning their goals and working together to solve global problems, or we could see them clashing in ways that have catastrophic consequences.
So even if we solve the control problem for a single AI, we still need to figure out how to manage the interactions between multiple AIs. It's like we're not just designing a superintelligence, we're designing an entire ecosystem of intelligence.
That's a great way to put it. And understanding principles from game theory, economics, even evolutionary biology becomes crucial in navigating this multipolar world. We have to think about incentives, alliances, and the potential for emergent behaviors that we can't even predict.
It's enough to make your head spin.
Yeah.
But amidst all this talk of potential dangers and existential risks, I keep coming back to this sense of agency. You know, we have the power to shape this future, right? We're not just passive bystanders.
Absolutely. And Bostrom, he emphasizes that point. He stresses the importance of strategic thinking and proactive action. We need to invest in AI safety research, foster collaboration and dialogue, and carefully consider the values we want to embed in these powerful systems.
It's a call to action, isn't it? Yeah. A reminder that the future is not preordained.
Yeah.
We have a role to play in shaping it and steering it towards a positive outcome.
And that's what we'll be exploring further in the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at some of the specific strategies and actions Bostrom proposes for navigating this uncharted territory.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. You know, different kinds of superintelligence control methods, the singleton, the multipolar world. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. I mean, Bostrom, he throws a lot at you in superintelligence, but it's not all doom and gloom, right? He actually offers some strategies for navigating this complex landscape. That's what makes the book so valuable. I think it's not just a warning. It's also kind of like a roadmap. Okay, so where do we even begin to tackle something as massive as the future of superintelligence? Well, one of the most important things Bostrom argues is getting the values right from the start. Right. Makes sense. As we've discussed, a superintelligent AI with the wrong goals, that could be catastrophic. Remember the paperclip maximizer? Oh, yeah, right. That thought experiment really illustrates how a seemingly harmless goal, when pursued by a superintelligence with no regard for human values, could have devastating consequences. It's a chilling reminder that we need to be incredibly careful about what we ask a superintelligence to do. So how do we avoid creating a paperclip maximizer or something even worse? Well, Bostrom explores some pretty radical ideas, like trying to capture humanity's coherent, extrapolated volition.
That's a mouthful. What does that even mean?
Basically, it's trying to figure out what humanity would want if we were all much smarter, more rational, and could somehow like agree on our ultimate values. Think of it like a supercharged version of the United Nations, but for values.
But how can we possibly know what humanity would want if we were all smarter? Wouldn't that depend on how we define intelligence and better?
That's a great question, and one that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries. Bostrom, he acknowledges that it's a difficult task, but he argues that it's essential to at least try.
So it's not just about programming in specific rules. It's about setting up a framework where the AI can learn and evolve in a way that's beneficial to humanity.
Exactly, and that means thinking carefully about the learning process itself.
Yeah.
How do we teach a superintelligence about morality, ethics, about the things we value most as humans?
It's almost like raising a child, but on a cosmic scale.
It is, in a way. Bostrom, he talks about the importance of mentorship, of guiding the AI's development and shaping its understanding of our world and our values.
But it's not just about shaping the AI. It's also about shaping ourselves, right?
You got it. Bostrom makes this really interesting point that we need to work on ourselves too. We need to become more rational, more cooperative, and better at long-term thinking if we want to navigate a future with superintelligence successfully.
So it's not just about AI catching up to us. It's also about us leveling up as a species.
Exactly, and that means tackling some of humanity's biggest challenges: conflict, inequality, short-sightedness, the tendency to prioritize immediate gratification over long-term well-being.
It's a tall order, but one that feels increasingly urgent as we get closer to the possibility of superintelligence.
Absolutely. And Bostrom, he emphasizes that this isn't something any one person, organization, or even country can do alone. He stresses the importance of collaboration, of working together across disciplines and national borders to address these challenges.
It's a global challenge that requires a global response, but that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Right. We've seen how difficult it is to get people to agree on even basic things, let alone something as complex as superintelligence.
It's true, but Bostrom reminds us that the stakes are incredibly high. The future of intelligent life, not just human life, could depend on our ability to cooperate and solve these problems together.
It's both a sobering thought and an incredibly inspiring one, isn't it?
It is. We're facing an unprecedented challenge, but it's also an unprecedented opportunity to rethink our priorities, reimagine what it means to be human, and shape a future where intelligence flourishes, not just for our species, but for all of existence.
Wow. That's a powerful vision. So as we wrap up our deep dive into superintelligence, what's the biggest takeaway you want listeners to walk away with?
I think that the main point is this: we need to start thinking about superintelligence now. We need to have these difficult conversations, invest in research, and work together to ensure that the future of intelligence is a positive one, not a catastrophic one.
Well said. Superintelligence is a book that will challenge your assumptions, expand your thinking, and maybe even keep you up at night. But it's a book you won't soon forget. And who knows, it might just inspire you to play a role in shaping the future of intelligence itself.
Yeah, that's what we hope for. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.